Flight attendants of Reddit. What's the most NSFW thing that happened during flight or off flight? Story 1. I once had a lady in the first row of first class blowing the guy she was with, and they were filming it. Story 2, 9/11. Story 2. I work as a flight nurse for an air ambulance service, and one of the more bizarre calls I've had involved picking up a very drunk kid from a remote wilderness location. He was experiencing shallow breathing and hypoxia, so we loaded him up, put him on oxygen, and took off, all while he was still asleep. The kid was so out of it, he didn't realize where he was and must have thought he was at home in bed. Halfway through our flight to the hospital, still groggy and drunk, he pulled down his pants and started jerking off. Right there in the helicopter, 3,000 feet in the air. My partner tried to stop him, which woke him up, but that didn't faze him at all. He kept going with one hand while trying to rub my partner's, a dude, nipples with the other. I'm laughing hysterically and giving the play-by-play to the pilot, who's also cracking up so much that we started flying sideways. By the time we got to the receiving facility, the doctor was not impressed. Story 3. I had a passenger who was vomiting blood like there was no tomorrow while we were in the middle of the Atlantic. No chance of going back, just forward. We did everything we could to help him and asked if there were any doctors on board. No luck. Oxygen was provided, which wasn't absolutely necessary, but did help calm him down a bit. Eventually, after what felt like forever, he stopped. His row looked like something straight out of a horror movie. The funniest part? When we finally landed, he refused an ambulance or any medical assistance. Story 4. Night flight in business class, where the suites are combined. A couple started going at it with the blankets on top of them. They thought they were being coy, but the loud, "I'm coming," gave it away. Another one was in the lavatory in the midsection of economy class, where a couple figured out that the toilets on both sides of the aisles had a split door in the middle, and they managed to unlock it. The plane was really quiet until we heard a rhythmic banging against the wall that gave them away. Someone replied, "Next time I'm about to bust, I'm going to yell, 'I'm coming,' gave it away." Story 5. My mate's wife works as an attendant for a large airline, and she once told us about a time when almost all the staff got PTSD from a nightmare flight. Half of the passengers on a 19-hour flight got food poisoning from the in-flight meal. It was so severe that within 20 minutes of serving, the first person rushed to the toilet in absolute horror. It was basically the scene from Bridesmaids on a plane. About half of the massive airliner had eaten the bad food, so over 60 people were battling for less than 6 toilets multiple times. The situation got so bad that the airline had to ground the plane and do a deep clean. They were halfway across the ocean, so they couldn't even turn back. They had to land in Hawaii. Apparently it was everywhere. The seats, the floors, inside carry-on bags, just everywhere. Story 6. I'm not a flight attendant, but I work as an aircraft mechanic inside the cabin. On one of my shifts, I was assigned to a flight from LA. All the passengers had disembarked, except for one woman who rushed into the lavatory and locked herself in. Authorities boarded the aircraft, assuming she was a potential threat. I was on the ramp ready to board, and I saw the authorities escorting the woman off the plane. She had a long roll of tissue paper trailing behind her. When our crew chief gave us the go-ahead to board, we found a trail of bloodstains leading to the carpet. I asked my crew chief what happened, and he told me the woman was experiencing menorrhagia, a heavy menstrual flow. The aircraft looked like a crime scene, with blood splattered across the carpet, seats, and even the lavatory. Story 7. A family member of mine works as a district attorney in charge of prosecuting crimes at a major airport in California. So all those videos of people losing their cool at the gate or on the plane, she has to deal with them. The worst story I heard was about a guy on a flight from Las Vegas to LAX. For those who don't know, that's about an hour flight max. This guy was sitting in the last row near the bathroom. In the final 15 minutes of the flight, for whatever reason, he suddenly whips his dick out and starts going to town. The flight lands, they evacuate everyone, and wait for airport police to handle the situation. 5 minutes later, he casually strolls off the plane, clueless about what had just happened, and is promptly arrested. Turns out he wasn't mentally ill. For whatever reason, he took an Ambien before this short flight. He had no memory of getting on the plane and woke up in the back of a police car, utterly distraught and horrified. No prior criminal history, just took the wrong pill at the wrong time. I believe he ended up doing some community service and got everything expunged. Story 8. I'm not a flight attendant, but I'm a million-plus miler. On a domestic flight, as soon as we land, a large man gets up from his seat in first class and heads to the forward bathroom. Of course, now we're stuck on the tarmac waiting for him to come out. About 10 minutes go by, and finally the attendant starts knocking on the door with no response. She calls the pilot, thinking maybe he passed out. The pilot comes out and announces he's heading in to check on him. The door unlocks and opens. I'm in seat 1C, so I've got a clear view. And there's the guy, standing there with his phone on the sink and headphones in, working himself over with quite a bit of passion. It takes him a second to realize the door's open, and then he falls over trying to pull up his pants. He ended up going back to his seat and deplaned like nothing happened. Turns out, maybe it's not technically illegal to masturbate on a plane, just really frowned upon. Story 9. I'm not a flight attendant, but I used to sit up front. Not quite NSFW, but others have posted their poop stories, so here's mine. You've probably flown commercial, crammed into a tube for hours, paying as little as possible to get somewhere fun. Well, I used to pack people into small tubes who paid top dollar for the experience. I used to fly private aircraft, but I wasn't exactly a huge success in the industry. The large commercial tubes have functional, if basic, toilets, but the small glitzy tubes usually only have a basic fold-out toilet or nothing at all. Nothing that you can see, at least. There's often a seat with a cushion that looks different from the others. That's the emergency toilet. The center of the cushion pops out to reveal a chemical toilet, basically a bucket of chemicals in a plastic bag. Ours was in the last row of the aircraft, a 3-seat row that was cramped. Nobody ever used it. Most people can hold it for a couple of hours, and the idea of pooping in front of others only appeals to a very specific type of person, and that wasn't the crowd I usually catered to. But one day I was flying a small, mixed-gender group, and one of the ladies had an urgent problem. Apparently, it wasn't something that could wait. I explained the process, expecting her to decline, as most passengers had before. But she didn't decline. After the procedure to unstow the toilet, she sat down, shoulder to shoulder with the other 2 passengers in that row, and the whole cabin was treated to about 15 minutes of sounds that didn't leave much to the imagination. Then the smell hit, and we all started regretting whatever street food she had eaten. The fans were cranked on, and I even cracked open the small window up front. We briefly considered using the emergency oxygen, but decided against it, explaining that during a real emergency would have been way more awkward. We finished the flight, and as they were disembarking, everyone looked shell-shocked. Normally, ground ops handles the turnaround and cleaning, but I swapped duties and agreed to dispose of the toilet since they didn't want to. It turned out I got the better end of the deal, though. That seat, faux leather, was in terrible condition, while all I had to do was move a closed bucket. So this small group overspent on their flight for the glamour of pooping in a bag in front of their friends. Of course, I overspent on my licenses for the glamour of getting hotboxed by fart smells, so they kind of got the better deal after all. Story 10. I was restocking the bottom of a beverage cart, so I was kneeling down next to a lavatory. A good-looking lady stood up, somehow wearing nothing but fishnet stockings and a crop top. That was it. She stopped right in front of me, and I was eye level with her shaved privates. Then she turned and went into the lavatory. As she walked away, I noticed every single male passenger leaning into the aisle to watch her pass. The same thing happened when she came out. When she deplaned, she was fully dressed again. We decided not to make a big deal out of it. Story 11. A friend of mine who's a flight attendant for a budget airline once told me this wild story that still cracks me up. It happened on a long-haul flight, and she noticed a couple in the back who were acting a little too cozy. Like, we're probably not allowed to do this in public, cozy. At first, she thought nothing of it. Just another day of serving snacks and pretending not to notice. And an hour later, she's walking down the aisle when she sees the guy, pants literally down to his ankles, trying to make an announcement, if you catch my drift. His partner, totally on board, laughing and encouraging the chaos like it was a game. At this point, my friend is doing her best to keep it together, trying not to laugh and make eye contact with the rest of the passengers who are doing their best to ignore what's going on in the back row. But then it gets even weirder. The couple decides to take things further, completely forgetting there are over 100 people on the plane. At this point, my friend had to go full professional mode and calmly make an announcement asking for assistance with a passenger behavior issue. By the time security showed up, the couple acted like nothing had happened, casually sitting there as if they hadn't just turned the cabin into a circus. Of course, they ended up sneaking off the plane last, red-faced and trying to pretend they hadn't just embarrassed themselves in front of everyone. Story 12, 9/11. Again, if you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.